Oh, hello there. If you haven't met the star of the channel, this is Hunter. He likes to help me with my makeup sometimes. It's probably the reason why most of my makeup is covered in a layer of cat fur. Hi, my name is Lauren. Hi, my name is Lauren if you're new here, and if you're not new and you're returning and you've subscribed, you're the best. I really appreciate you. What we're gonna do today is we are going to do something to convince me not to buy other things. Okay, let me explain. I feel like I am seeing a uptick in neutral palettes being released by brands that I like. All these neutral palettes are calling my name, but I know I don't need them. But there is what I call my lizard brain where I'm like, I must have it. Please purchase it. Add it to cart. And I have to remind myself not to listen to the lizard in my brain because you do not need it, Lauren. Why are you getting more neutral palettes? So what I did to kind of help dissuade myself from spending any more money on neutral palettes is I decided to do a list of my top 10 favorite neutral palettes that I have in my collection. And this is actually really fun because it gives me a chance to rifle through my entire eyeshadow palette, which I always love. I spent all day yesterday just pawing through them, doing swatches all over the place. There is cat hair just floating everywhere. My God, sir. But it gave me a chance to really revisit some palettes that I haven't pulled out in a long time and to remember why I love them so much, because so many of these are great palettes. So I have 10, right? I have 12 palettes that we're gonna talk about. I can't even count today, apparently. I definitely don't need to be adding any more neutral palettes. And these aren't necessarily in any specific order. These are just the ones that I want to talk about. And some of them are mainstream, some of them are indie brands, some of them are available still, some of them are not. So a little bit of makeup history in front of me right now. It's kind of cool. So let's just go through them. I will talk about why I chose every single palette and why I love it and why I think it's a great neutral palette. Number one, this palette actually survived a declutter of mine. I had decluttered it, I got rid of it, and then I pulled it out for a use it or lose it video and decided I really liked it. And it's really bordering on what I would consider neutral. It's not a true neutral palette, but there's enough neutral shades in here that I thought it would count. This is the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. Now, it does have a lot of gold and it is leaning on the warm side, but it's the warm side of neutral. And these shadows perform great. Like the OG Naked palettes are so good. They perform well. They're not the most exciting, but if you want a consistently good look, this is what I would go for. It's just a good palette. And I need to use it more because I saved it from my last declutter. Will it survive this next declutter? I think so, because it's just a good formula. I really do like this palette. Next up, we have another. There's a few in here that are super old. I get a little bit nervous about using them on my face. Old. This one, I don't feel like it's that old, but it's probably getting there. And this is the Too Faced Gingerbread Extra Spicy palette. Now, if you know, you know, when Too Faced comes out with the tin palettes, they're the best formula. And this is just a great neutral palette. Yes, there's a pop of blue, but I don't use that blue. I really don't. I use the neutral colors. It still smells good too. It still smells like sugar. So yeah, I'm taking that as a sign that it's still good to use. I think I'm gonna pull this out and use it in a video soon because it's just so cute. It's so good. It always performs well. And again, because it's so old, I haven't been reaching for it lately, but when I was pulling palettes for this video, I saw this and I was like, yes, I love that palette. And it's such a good neutral palette. So I'm gonna be playing with this one a lot more in the next upcoming weeks so I can just remind myself of how good Too Faced can be when they want to be. Shooting over to a luxury brand now, we've got Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotize. Now, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Yes, you have like that one purple, you've got some pinks in here, but when I use this palette, I really go for the neutral shades because just like in the Naked Urban Decay palette, the formula is so good. It's so easy to blend. It just makes me happy. I hated Charlotte Tilbury's formula the first time I tried it. Like, I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was like in a bad mood. Totally could be it. I don't know. But I didn't like it. And I didn't think that $75 price tag that you pay for one of these palettes was worth it at all. Even now, I still think, I know it's a luxury brand, but $75 for one eyeshadow palette is out of control. But I do love the formula. It is a fantastic formula, and it's just so easy to blend, and you can use one color and just swish it on your eyes and be done. You can create a whole look. You can pull from any part of this palette and it makes a cohesive look. It's pricey, but it is good. Ooh, number 4, let's do indie. So Glaminatrix Cosmetics is an indie company out of Australia. And I don't think they sell this palette anymore. I think they just stopped selling it. But this is the Nearly Natural palette. And this is what the outer packaging looks like. And this is what the inner packaging looks like. Oh, this palette is so, so good. The mattes are just so easy to blend. It's so easy. And honestly, like, I don't do a lot of variety with this palette. I know the colors I like and I tend to reach for those, but it's the neutrals, it's the browns, it's the, like, more neutral shimmers that I reach for. It's so good. This is an indie company I highly recommend if you haven't checked them out. It is a little expensive for shipping. They're in Australia. I'm in the US, so I find it worth it though, because this is just a great palette and it's fun. And there's enough different shimmers in here and enough different neutrals that you can really play up the look. Not every look is gonna look the same. So that's a good thing, especially when you're dealing with a neutral palette. Going back to luxury, we've got the Natasha Denona Glam palette. Now, you might have thought that I would have been pulling out the new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, but I decided to pull out the Glam palette because the Glam palette remains one of my favorite palettes from Natasha. And I say that like we're on first name basis. And it's such a good neutral palette. It's a little bit cooler toned, which is my preference, but every single look you do with this palette looks unique. And what I have found with the newest I Need a Nude palette, it's not quite the same. They look pretty similar regardless of what colors you use. But I feel like this palette has enough of a variety that you can get a whole ton of different looks from it. Again, this is where Natasha Denona really shines. This formula is her best formula, and it's so easy to blend out. The shimmers are beautiful, and it's my favorite palette from her. Next up, if you have heard me talk about ColourPop, or if you've seen my ColourPop ranking, which I'll link somewhere here, you know how much I love this palette. This is the Stone Cold Fox palette, and it still remains one of my top 3 palettes from ColourPop. Even though, you know, they're coming out with stuff constantly, this is constantly in my rotation because it is such a good neutral palette. This is the palette I reach for when I have a palette that's maybe all brights or all shimmers and I want to pull something a little more neutral into it. This is the palette that I go for. There's such a variety of colors that it works with pretty much any other palette. So it's a great palette to bring in when you need something more neutral. And it's just a good representation of ColourPop's formula. I mean, when they do it well, they do it really well. And this is an example of them doing a really amazing formula for a really affordable price. So Stone Cold Fox, definitely high up in my rankings of favorite palettes ever, and super high up. If I had to do a ranking of my favorite nude palettes, it would be pretty high up there. You probably know, if you've been here before, that I really love Sydney Grace. They are also an indie company. They're located in the US, and their formula is so, so good. Their mattes are some of my favorite mattes ever. And this palette is the Unbreakable Bond palette. And you know, I don't reach for it enough because it's just very, it's a good nude palette. As you can see, I have a lot of those. But as I was going through my collection, I brought this out. I started doing some swatches, and it reminded me of how good Sydney Grace and their formula is, and especially their mattes. I am the person to always talk about shimmers, right? I need shimmers in my life. Don't give me an all matte palette. I won't know what to do with it. But in this case, the mattes in this palette are so fantastic. They're so easy to use. They blend out seamlessly. Oh, I love them. Look, the shimmers are great too. They're super metallic. They're these beautiful foiled, full of pigment colors that I love. That's my preference. I want stuff with more pigment in it. And It's just a good all around. But the mattes are so good at this. I absolutely love the mattes and the Unbreakable Bond palette. So good. Oh, and a lot of the times their palettes, they come out with a light version and a dark version to better suit different skin tones. So this is the light version if you're curious. Next up, this one is another oldie but goodie. This one is from Pat McGrath Labs. This is the Mothership Subliminal Platinum Bronze palette. And let me tell you, every time I see this end up in someone's declutter, my heart breaks because they don't know how good this palette is. Okay, sorry, I have the little liner in it. And it's gonna probably blind you. I'm gonna try to avoid, there we go. So this is what the inside of the palette looks like. It's 6 shades, it's boring, it's fantastic, okay? This is the perfect smaller nude palette if you want something easy to use, you don't want a lot of options. This is it. This is so good. Each color performs flawlessly. It's mostly shimmers, there's only one matte. It's kind of my jam. And it is honestly my favorite palette from Pat McGrath. Pat McGrath comes out with these huge palettes that everyone loves, and I will still be talking about the Platinum Bronze palette until I die. It is so good. If you can get your hands on it, you should, because it's that good, and it's just easy to travel with. 6 shades, it's not too complicated. It's just so good. It's so good. But I've seen so many people declutter it, and it's just, do they not know? It's so good. Like, this will last through every declutter because it's just so good. Ooh, let's talk about a drugstore palette. I guess ColourPop is technically drugstore pricing, right? I would say it is. But this one is from Makeup Revolution. We don't talk about Makeup Revolution, okay? We don't talk about it very much here because it's not very good. This is the exception. This is the Maxi Reloaded Infinite Bronze palette. This is what I have on my eyes today. And these big palettes, these big plastic palettes that they come out with that are super affordable, have some of the best eyeshadow formula that I've seen from a drugstore, okay? Like, it is so absolutely fantastic. The shimmers are good, the mattes are good. This one has some color variation, but I would say for the most part, it definitely is a nude palette. It's got some pops of purples, I'll give it that. But I never reach for the purples, and I love purple. It's the nudes in here. They're so good. Those browns, everything performs so well, and this is such an affordable palette. Like, if you see them come out with a palette like this where it has just, it's big, it's got the plastic, it's Revolution Reloaded, you know, one of their like sister brands, or under, I don't even know. They have so many names under Makeup Revolution. I don't even know. This is so good, okay? This is so good. I hope they come out with a new one for Halloween or for fall, because they're so good. I have 2, and just the formula in this is so surprisingly great. It's so good for the price you pay. So, and definitely another favorite nude palette of mine. Okay, let's talk about the Tarte Maneater. This is the Maneater After Dark palette. I just did a quickie review of their newest Maneater palette, and I find them to have very similar formulas, and I love them. They're really good. They're really good. And yes, this has a couple pops of color, but I would say for the most part, what really stands out is the neutral shades. And that's mainly because most of the ones that have this leopard imprint in them, fantastic shimmers. Like, Tarte, where have you been? Okay, because this is great. This is a great palette. I was blown away when I tried it and realized that it was really good. Like, I kind of bought it on a whim. I did a review of it and I was like, you know, like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. I'm gonna just give it a chance. And I loved it. It's really good. It's easy to travel with because it's actually very slim, and it's got a little bit of weight to it too. But I find this one really easy to travel with if you do want a neutral palette. And even though I'm not going a lot of places, I still like that option. But the shimmers are just so beautiful. The mattes work really well too, but I wouldn't say they're anything special. But the shimmers in this palette, they just knocked it out of the ballpark. They're so beautiful. Again, the ones with the leopard imprint are just so soft and shimmery. Oh, love it, love it. Okay, I went back and forth as to whether I wanted to include this palette because I don't think it's a palette that I would feel comfortable using on my eyes anymore. Let me sniff it. No, see, it still smells fine. I think it's still fine. Okay, this is the Smashbox Cover Shot Golden Hour Eye Palette. This is very old. It's very old. And it's very tiny, but it's so good. It's so good. There's really, there's these three colors that I reach for all the time. I have not brought this out in a long time, but they used to be my go-to colors. This was just a go-to palette for me, kind of before I got into really colorful makeup, because this is easy to use. It's easy, everything blended out beautifully. I really never had to worry about my look when I had this on my eyes, which was always something that I was looking for. I don't want to worry about what's on my face. I want to put it on my face and have it ready to go for the rest of the day. And this does the trick. And again, like, it's so small, it's compact, it's travel friendly, and I think it's still good. It smells fine. There's no smell at all. So I would be interested to, okay, let's just, I didn't want to swatch anything. Yeah, they're still performing. Let me swatch this one. Oh, they're so soft. They're so soft. I don't think they're quite as impactful as they used to be. I think it is kind of wearing down a little bit. So I may have to say goodbye to this palette at the end of the year for health reasons. I don't want to keep anything this old, and this is probably like 6 or 7 years old at this point, but it's so good. And I just wanted to bring it up because when Smashbox does it well, again, they can do it really well. They can pull out these amazing formulas when they want to. And this is just like an OG great nude palette. So yeah, last, certainly not least, because it is the biggest, it wouldn't be a favorite palette video unless I included one from one of my all-time favorite brands, and that is Beauty Bay. This is the nude palette. It's huge! It's huge. Got 42 colors in here, and I have not reached for this guy in a long time. I think, to be honest, I've only reached for it a handful of times. But the reason I wanted to include him on here is because the Beauty Bay formula is amazing, and the color variety that you get in this palette is also amazing. And given though I've only used it a handful of times, I can say that my look turned out perfectly each time I used it. Just a great palette for such an affordable price. It's really, really good. I just love that you have your grays, you have your browns, you have your lighter colors. You basically have the entire nude spectrum in one palette. So whatever color you could possibly need, it's gonna be in here, and it's gonna work really well. And that's just one thing that I've come to admire about Beauty Bay, which, if you didn't know, is a brand out of the UK, but their formula is great. And these palettes aren't very expensive. I don't remember exactly how much they were. I wanna say 35, but for 42 colors, like, that's a great deal. And for 42 colors that perform well, that's an amazing deal. So I absolutely love this palette. I think it's great, and kind of stoked that I got to talk about it and bring it out, because now it's going to live with me in the bathroom so I can reach for it more because I need to. So those were my top favorite nude palettes. Some of them were older, some of them were newer, some of them were drugstore, some of them are luxury, but it just helps remind me when I do videos like this that, hey, you have so many great palettes. Use the ones you have. You don't need to go buy out the new Patrick Ta one, which I wouldn't anyways because it's all mattes. But still, I was a little bit tempted because it's Patrick Ta. But I was like, no, Lauren, look at this. You've got so many great palettes. You do not need any more. So I'm so excited to have pulled some of these out of storage so I can get more use out of them because they're so good. I wouldn't say they're good unless I fully believe they were great. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you thought of the palettes I pulled out. What's your favorite nude palette? Let me know. I will not buy it, I swear. Probably already have it, to be honest, somewhere in my collection. But these ones are great, and I would love to know if you agree. I will see you all in my next video, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Bye!